Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luke Tannen. I'm Executive Director of Chicago Innovation, and I want to welcome you all to Innovation for the Ages. The age that we are celebrating at Chicago Innovation this year is 20, and I'm joined by the person who started it all 20 years ago, Tom Kuzmarski.
Thanks, Luke. Hey, everyone. It's great to see you here today. And I wanted to just start by saying that, at Chicago Innovation, one of our guiding values is that innovation is for everyone. And whatever your background, your race, your gender, your vocation, as we're focusing on today, really, no matter your age, everyone has something to learn and everyone has something to teach.
Definitely right, Tom. And we found, related to that point, one of the keys to innovation is intergenerational collaboration. And there's just so much untapped or overlooked knowledge between generations, between people of different ages. And I think we can all be more proactive about building relationships across ages that can help each of us reach our potential as teams, as companies, and as individuals.
Well, and that's exactly why we co-founded with the Village Chicago, Chicago Innovation and the Village Chicago, Ageless Innovators, which really is the city's first and only intergenerational co-mentoring program.
And this program bridges the generations through reciprocal co-mentoring. So people are sharing experiences, skills, perspectives, and knowledge. And everyone in Ageless Innovators, and this is what I think is so cool about it, everyone is a mentor and a mentee at the same time.
And so together, the Ageless Innovators community really is aimed at making sure that from each other, we continuously learn and grow and build lasting connections between generations.
Now, before we hear from our speakers today, there's a few event-related items that I want to share. First, if you have a question for the panel, please send us your question via the Zoom Q&A, and we'll spend the last few minutes addressing them. And also keep an eye out for a couple polling questions throughout the program because we want to hear from you and your perspective, the audience. Now, I want to recognize our year-round sponsors who help make everything possible at Chicago Innovation, and that's starting with our diamond sponsors, SMS Assist, Wintrust, Accenture, and Walgreens. Gold sponsors, Comcast Business and Exelon. Silver sponsor, Vetter-Price. Bronze sponsors, Energy BBDO, and we have the longtime former CEO and current chairman of Energy BBDO as one of our speakers today. Crown Castle, LK, Thompson Coburn, Ramsey Innovations, Groupon, and Aero Digital Labs. And then our media partners, Intersection, Clear Channel Outdoor, WBBM News Radio, and NBC Chicago. And I also want to give a special thank you to our Ageless Innovators sponsors and funders, RRF Foundation for Aging and Wintrust. And now, without further ado, I'd like to hand the Zoom mic over to Kathy Kaloji, the executive board member of the Village Chicago, who has been our fantastic partner in running Ageless Innovators, and to share a few words.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. For those of you who are not familiar with the Village Chicago, we are a community of people over 50 and dedicated to the idea that older people can and should be full participants in life, community, and work. And as a co-creator and partner with Chicago Innovation and Ageless Innovators, we've seen firsthand that when different generations work together, it benefits everyone. It enhances everyone's life, and some unexpected friendships are formed. We're thrilled to be a partner in this event today and look forward to hearing from our co-mentors. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Kathy. And you're exactly right. There is great power in intergenerational relationships. I have a number of them, and I love the younger people. I'm an older adult, and I love the younger people that I have built relationships with. Today, we'll hear from three great pairs of intergenerational communicators, and leading this discussion today is our great friend Mary O'Donnell. Mary is the president of RRF Foundation for Aging, whose mission is really dedicated to improving the lives of older adults. Mary joined RRF Foundation for Aging in 2009 and really focuses on grant making, strategic planning, and actually running the entire foundation. She's on the board of many other organizations, and she herself has a great passion for improving the lives of older adults. With great pleasure, let me introduce Mary O'Donnell.
Thank you so much for that, Tom. And hello, everybody. How excited I am to be with you today to moderate this important and timely event, Innovation for the Ages. Such an honor. As Tom said, I do have a passion for the power of intergenerational relationships, which is our theme for this afternoon. And that actually dates back to some work that I did early in my career out in Boston, when I was able to learn firsthand the power of intergenerational relationships through an intergenerational program that at that time, it's called Experience Course. Some of you may know of it from other cities around the country. At that time, we were bringing older adults into Boston public schools to be able to help read with and mentor elementary age children. I was a 20-something fresh out of college. I went there because I was kind of interested in the kids and thought, oh, this is an interesting idea to use older adults in a meaningful way. But it was so eye-opening to me because I suddenly realized that the intergenerational connections I was a part of too. As a 20-something, I was being able to see the wisdom and experience and passion of these older adult volunteers from the communities and forge relationships of my own that really transformed the way that I thought about myself and my contributions to the nonprofit sector. I then went on throughout my career and have been morphed by older adult mentors of mine, some of which might be involved in the event today or participating in the audience, and have just seen time and time again that that adage of everyone having something to teach and something to learn, that wonderful theme of ageless innovators really does pan out. So today we're going to have the benefit of hearing a little bit of a different type of panel format, and I hope that you all enjoy it. We're going to have 3 different pairs of ageless innovators join us. And through that, we'll get to hear a little bit about their experiences and their perspectives. And I hope as you listen in, you'll hear that the ways that they have engaged with each other's have shown that everyone has something to teach, everyone has something to learn. At RF Foundation for Aging, we think of the power of intergenerational connectedness being a really, really useful way to break down the isolation and disconnect that so many of us feel and that has been only heightened by the pandemic. So listen in. As we get going, I'm now going to start before that first interesting pair to get a sense of who we have with us in the audience today. So if we could have the first poll, I want to see what the intergenerational mix is among you all. If you could please select where you are in this continuum, we'll get a sense of the mix. Do you identify yourself as a millennial or someone younger than that? Those are our peers in their 39 and younger age. Do you identify as a Gen Xer, one of our peers in the 40 to 55-year-old age? Do you identify as a baby boomer, a peer in the 56 to 74-year-old age group? Or are you 75 or older? You might identify as a traditionalist or someone from the silent generation. So if you all could take a moment and plug your category in here, we'll see the rich diversity of ages amongst us. We do indeed have an intergenerational group with a nice mix of millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers, and those 75 and older. So how terrific that we're going to be able to really see the power of intergenerational knowledge sharing within this group as well. I'll just echo the item that Luke mentioned earlier, that we really hope you will use that chat function and share observations, questions, or other remarks that you might have as we go through today. So now up to our first pair, Tonice and Ashley. Could you join us, please? I'm going to first introduce Tonice, who's chairman of Energy BBDO and a director of BBDO worldwide. She led this company as CEO for 24 years and is a frequent speaker on brand building, leadership, and culture. So pleased to have you with us here today, Tanise. We also have Ashley Moy, who is the co-founder of Cast 21, a really phenomenal company. Ashley herself was listed as one of Crane's 20 under 20. And she speaks regularly about healthcare and innovation to governments and Fortune 500 companies around the world. So Ashley and Tanise, so interested to pose some questions to you. Could you first start though by taking us a little bit beyond that top tier introduction that I gave and just tell us what you're up to today and what you're excited about? Tanise, let's start with you.
Okay. First of all, wonderful to be here. I always love being with Chicago Innovation, and this program's particularly wonderful. So thank you for having me. As chairman of Energy BBDO, I remain engaged with the agency's biggest clients. I'm also represent the agency in the community. For example, I'm the immediate past chair of the Executives Club of Chicago, and I sit on that board. I'm working with our team right now in P33 to develop the City of Chicago's tech brand. And right now I'm also co-chairing a annual and national event for UNICEF, UNICEF at 75, a birthday party that will take place in 10 cities on Giving Tuesday to celebrate that big birthday.
Oh, phenomenal.
So
that's great. And if we're talking about intergenerationalism, you have a new generation added to your family with a new.
The secret is that's the thing I'm most excited about.
That's
I have a
really
5-day-old granddaughter who was, by the way, born on my mom's birthday. So,
expanding the generations. That's powerful. Wonderful. Ashley, what are you up to and excited about today?
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to be continuing my work with Cast 21. As you mentioned, I am the co-founder and president of this orthopedic medical device company. And in my position, I'm very excited to be forging some new partnerships. So stay tuned. We're really excited to announce some really big national and international things that we're doing here. And beyond that, I serve on some nonprofit boards on their diversity inclusion initiatives. So I'm really excited to be expanding on that conversation and talking to everybody today about ageless innovators.
Terrific. So let's kick it off. I'd love to hear what 3 words you would use to describe your fellow mentor. Of course, you each were mentoring each other, given the wonderful and innovative model. What 3 words would you use to describe your mentor? Tanise, how would you describe Ashley?
Okay, it took me all of a second to think of these 3 words to describe Ashley. The first is driven.
Yep.
The second is ingenious, and the third is humble. So I don't know if you want elaboration, but those are my 3 words.
We'll hear Ashley's first. What 3 would you use?
Thank you so much, Tanise. For you, I was thinking inspirational, accomplished, and creative.
Ooh, I like those. Okay. So give me a rationale for one of those. Ashley, what one of those would you like to pick, and tell us why you picked it?
I would say inspirational. When I first met Tanise, everything about her, the way that she presented herself, the topics that she brought up to help me work through some of the things I was thinking about, all I could think of was, oh my gosh, this woman can do it all. I want to be like that. Even her outfits were great.
She does, and she's looking good today too. So which out of the 3 words you picked for Ashley, Tanise, which one do you want to tell us a little about?
Oh, I'm going to cheat because they're linked. I'm going to cheat and say driven, because I think you'll learn more about Cast 21, but driven to solve real world problems.
Okay.
And the ingeniousness comes with the ability, because you can want to do that, but the ability to conceive solutions, and then also having the inventiveness to sort out how to execute with brilliance. And I think Ashley's demonstrated all of that so impressively.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I do want to hear more because I'm actually not as familiar. I've heard about it, but not as familiar as I'd like to be. So Ashley, could you just spend like 30 seconds, telling us about CAST 21. It seems so cool. What is this, and what should we know about it? Quick 30-second.
Absolutely. CAST 21 creates waterproof alternatives to casts and braces for people with broken bones. We've developed the only moldable to rigid product that can be applied in seconds without any access to modern day luxuries. That means no heat, no water, no electricity. And we've developed our flagship product to be able to give people of all ages their independence and freedoms back that they experience when they have orthopedic issues like broken bones or joint pains. And we're addressing some of the most common fracture types and other orthopedic indices that happen across all of the age groups.
Wow, I can see why it is really gaining so much attention and filling such a need in an incredibly innovative way. That's tremendous. Ooh, I'm gonna
Thank you.
your website later and learn more. Denise, you've had a masterful career in communication. Can you tell us a little bit about this theme that often comes up when we talk about intergenerational relationships, and that's texting versus phone calls, the different way that generations might be more comfortable, communicating with each other, strange memes, ever-changing lingo across the generations. How big is the communication barrier between the generations, really? There's a lot of talk about that. Does it create a barrier to collaboration and innovation? What have you seen?
Well, I think packed into everything that you just said, there's two parts of it. I think the first part is mode of communication, and the second part is related to content a little bit more. So let me break them apart in my answer.
Yeah.
I do not see big communication barriers between generations. I actually think that technology has been a magnificent enabler of more frequent, more flexible, more effective communication between generations. There's no question people have different preferences for the types, the modes of communication. Different relationships have different requirements, but we have so many wonderful tools today with which to connect. Communication, I think, is just better. I will share this. I don't think you can also predict, label who's going to prefer one thing. Here's a personal anecdote. I have a daily texting relationship with my 89-year-old aunt at her initiative.
Okay.
We talk once or twice a month because I call her, because I don't think we should only have a texting relationship, but it's just amazing. And conversely, my daughter, who's a millennial and of course, therefore a masterful world-class texter, and then when she was in school, she wanted to talk to me walking to class, so go figure. I just think it's about knowing the kind of relationship you have, the kind of preferences, and then picking your tools wisely.
Yeah. I love that. So we really shouldn't have our stereotypes.
Well, I don't think we should. Yeah. I don't think we should label or exactly put, have an assumed bias, that somebody will have. But the only other thing I wanted to mention on this was related to innovation and creativity, because that's another part of your question, and I think there too, technology has been our friend. And I think the pandemic showed us, it truly forced adoption across all generations in order to be able to get our work done. And we have an example from last year that no one could have conceived being possible, but within 6 months' time, without ever getting into a physical room, a multi-generational, multi-geographical team created, produced, and launched a new global campaign for the #1 spirit brand in the world in 26 markets. Wow. So if you think about what's required, that's like doing 1.5 years worth of work in a shorter amount of time. But technology made it possible, and we all learned fast, old ones and young ones alike, how to use technology to get the work done.
Terrific. Thank you for that and the example. Just in closing with your pair, could we hear what pre-existing thoughts you might have had about younger or older people before entering into the co-mentoring relationship that you two have shared? And how might those thoughts or pre-existing views changed or evolved through your interactions with each other?
I'd be happy to start with that. I actually participated in the Ageless Innovators program for a couple of reasons. And one of them was because I had an intergenerational team that I had to manage at a very young age. And I had thought going into the program that there were different ways that I had to communicate in order to be able to effectively work with people at the different generations. And what I learned through this program and under Tonice's wonderful leadership herself is that good leadership doesn't have to be segmented by generations or any other way that you may try to segment the groups of people that you work with. Good communication and good leadership is one thing in its own, and it does not have to live in its own silos.
And a wonderful takeaway for me, and I'm going to say this provocatively because it needed to be provoked with me, which is that experience is overrated. I mean, we talk so much about how it's important to hire for potential, but there is an incredible bias towards hiring for experience. And meeting Ashley was such a reminder that you have to look for what people are capable of. I would truly give up 5 people with relevant experience for one Ashley coming right out of school.
Wow.
Because of the tremendous potential and capability there.
Yeah.
You're so kind, Tonice. Thank you.
I mean it.
Well, that is so terrific, and what a richness you two have been able to experience together and demonstrate. So thank you for sharing your experiences with us. There might be some questions that we come back to you two with at the end, but now we're going to move to our next pairing. We're going to have an opportunity to hear from David and Kelly. David Baker, who is Executive Director of America's Urban Campus and former VP of External Affairs for Illinois Tech. David created the University Technology Park at ITT, which is a 300,000-foot award-winning life and science energy-focused technology park. So incredible. And Kelly Page is director of Bennett Labs and Bennett Day School. So her work has been on developing cross-platform learning experience for K through 12 higher education. And she's been featured on all sorts of fabulous places, including NBC, New York Times, TEDx stage. So we're delighted to have David and Kelly back with us today. Just as I did before, those were very high level intros. Could you each share just very quickly what you're up to these days and what you're excited about? Kelly, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so firstly, thank you very much. This is wonderful to be here. Being director of Bennett Labs at Bennett Day School, we have an amazing team of innovators and educators. And we, throughout the pandemic, have been very focused, obviously, on serving families. And throughout the pandemic, we actually launched an innovative program, app-based program called Bennett Live. So what we're really excited about, Bennett Live, is project-based learning on your device, on your app, or through your computer for families at home. And throughout the pandemic, we released over 240 videos and reached close to 1.5 million families through social media. And so me and my team at Bennett Labs have been managing all of Bennett Live. And we're excited for the summer for a little bit of a breather, a little bit of breathing space as we start to move into the next stage of development of Bennett Live.
Oh, terrific. Lots going on. David, how about you? What are you up to today, these days? What are you excited about?
I'm really excited about the fact that America's Urban Campus, which is the consortium of all the colleges and universities in the city, is now really contemplating reopening, full reopening, getting all the students back in classrooms, and they're having a true education after having spent a year and a half on Zoom. And it's just not the way college education works. It's worked all right, but we're so exciting. The other part of that is that our college students form a huge part of the loop population. Most of the schools are in downtown Chicago, and their absence, just like the absence of all other business people in the city, has, been just debilitating for all the businesses there. So I'm working with the city and with the schools on that whole process.
Oh, terrific. Terrific. Wow. So much going on. And I can see why the two of you would be a wonderful pairing. Let's hear what your 3 words would be for describing your fellow mentor. Kelly, how would you describe David in 3 words?
In 3 words, he is most certainly a catalyst. He is an epic connector. I'm going to give you a phrase there. Okay. And also he is a compassionate leader. Sorry, 3 phrases, but a very compassionate leader in the learning economy we have here in Chicago.
Yes. And tell us why catalyst stood out to you.
So when I met David and learned about his background and his history here in Chicago, and so by being a catalyst in how he brings people together to establish relationships, to then develop innovations. And so he's a real catalyst of those relationships.
Terrific. Terrific. David, what 3 words would you use to describe Kelly?
Well, she basically defined herself with that intro. I have creative, passionate, and entrepreneurial.
All right. All right. Pick one of those and tell us why.
Well, passionate. I have never met anybody so excited about being able to work with pre-K and 4 and 5-year-olds to generate new innovations as Kelly. And she's done such a great job of bringing these kids forward and creating new learning experiences for them through that process.
So terrific. So terrific. Okay, so I want to move to innovation because, of course, that's what so many in our audience are interested in here. And this crowd knows what it means to be an innovator. But what does it mean to be ageless? So the title of the program that you all participated in is Ageless Innovators. So what does it mean to be ageless? How would you describe that mindset? Hey, Kelly, you go, because you made a thinking.
So, and it's interesting because I think my consideration of the phraseology around ageless definitely changed throughout this experience. Okay. Meeting David, he was most definitely a catalyst for not just people I met, but also decisions I was making in my career at that time and also now. Yet for me, it was very much about being relatable and relatedness. And so it has nothing to do with being time or generation, whether you're a millennial or a boomer or silent generation. I don't even know what that means. But to me, it's about being relatable and relating to people. And very quickly, David and myself, as well as if I reflect on how we do intergenerational work in our school, it's about really connecting on ideas that you're both related to and relating to each other.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Ageless. Mm-hmm. How about you, David? What's your mindset on that word?
Well, you made me reflect on seriously on what has gone on in my life in the last 20 years. And I think that to be ageless is to be able to proceed in life focused on goals and not on the constraints that may be based on stereotypes of life. And so I found myself in my mid-60s probably accomplishing some of the really most important goals, and objectives of my life, running right through the old shibboleth of when you're 65, you need to retire. And, finally in my middle 70s, I've figured out how to retire from that job and move into the new one. So it really was very important for me to just see the way forward and not worry about how old I was.
Have either of you ever witnessed age-based bias? Has that ever been something you've seen or experienced?
Yeah, I know. David, do you want to take this one first?
Well, I remembered a time when I was in a leadership position in a not-for-profit in the 90s. And I was part of the new CEO search committee. And there were 5 of us, all white men, all in their 50s. And or older, and we had a range of candidates, and including one young woman in her early 30s, and several men in their 40s and 50s. And so, kind of like what Tony said, we definitely picked the white male because of his experience, you know? And so now that you put this question in front of me, I said, well, there's a good example of me not making the right judgment necessarily based on what the person's capability was. But what happened is that, you know, several days after the individual accepted the job, he turned around and turned us down. And so all of us looked at each other and we picked the young woman. She's now stepping down after 25 years as CEO and an extraordinary run for the not-for-profit.
There you go.
I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that experience. And you know, because we all have biases, right? And also in terms of age, those biases can go in both directions. How about you, Kelly? Have you ever seen or experienced it?
So I was very fortunate with my education in Australia, which meant that I graduated with my PhD when I was 26. And I was working in tech fields, tech and education. And I remember at the time being treated, I would say, differently because I was younger than many people who had a little bit more experience, were older than me with similar qualifications. Yet what it taught me was, and that's one of the reasons I was also attracted to Bennett Day School, because we treat our kindergarten children and our 18-year-olds in high school right through to our faculty, no matter what their age is. They're designers, they're creatives, they're part of the learning process, and they're active agents. And so I think my own experience with when I was younger being, because I learned to code when I was like 11 and 12. Mm-hmm. So now when I see young children, we have our kindergarten children developing apps. And it's often there's an assumption when you're younger that you don't have the knowledge or you don't have the experience or you need to go into the workforce to develop those skills. Where actually young people are learning them every day. So it's, that's an experience, I think, of age bias that I've observed, witnessed, and I see it all the time in schools. We assume that our young people, you know, don't have an intelligence or don't have a knowledge base yet, when actually they do. We just don't create space for them to share.
Right. And there's an opportunity to create that space. Yeah. So we've been talking a lot, you know, with this about some pre-existing, you know, thoughts and whatnot. Yeah. But I'd love for you to just take, with your final question, an opportunity to share with us how moving through this co-mentoring program might have had some of your pre-existing thoughts change or evolve as you've gone through the experience.
Well, I went into the Aegis Innovators specifically to get around my discomfort zone with social media. So I asked to be paired with somebody who knew somebody about social media because, frankly, I got out of my first job right at the dawn of social media, and what did I know, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to use a smartphone, but so I really was concerned, though, that I just really wasn't going to be able to get it from a younger person. That, you know, she'd look down, maybe look down at me, say, well, come on, get with it. But Kelly was just a wonderful teacher. She you know, broke down all the barriers I had about using it, and now it's a critical part of my job. So that was what I overcame, and it didn't take long for her to be, you know, the first couple of sessions for her to get me engaged and excited about using it as part of the work that I do.
Yeah. How about you, Kelly?
Well, I think especially working with David, I think coming into Ageless Innovators, I've often assumed that, you know, someone who is more experienced or has different experiences and older than me might not be as accessible to have conversations. And David was incredibly accessible. He still is, just to have those conversations about all sorts of different topics. And I think it's helped me sort of look at how do I create space for, you know, different generations, whether it be younger or older or other people. So definitely accessibility. Instead of making assumptions that, you know, someone's not accessible to you, they actually are. But it's about reaching out. You know, David suggested, and we did this all through our time as Ageless Innovators, of getting together for meals. And that's how we, you know, very much met and mentored each other. And I think it really made it even more accessible as an experience, for me anyway. It was more social, and as Dave knows, I like that approach.
Till COVID.
Yeah, until
Right.
COVID. And then we had dinners via Zoom.
There you go. There you go. And especially since you already had the foundation and the relationship,
Yeah.
Right.
you're probably
So just the
craving it again.
accessibility, and that we're all accessible if we create space for each other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, tremendous.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for sharing some of those personal reflections and so much that you've gained from each other. Well, we might circle back to you guys at the end of
Okay.
this, but we are going to bop over to our last pairing. And then we're going to, as I said, get to some questions and answers from the audience. So all of you who are listening into these tremendous dialogues, please do not hesitate to put in the chat feature any questions that you may have for our dynamic pairings. All right, so up next, we have another set of ageless innovators. We're going to hear from David and Daniel. So honored today to have David Hiller with us today, who is the former president and CEO of the McCormick Foundation and former publisher and CEO of the LA Times, former publisher of CEO of Chicago Tribune. So a true legend. He serves currently on the board of the Field Museum, Chicago History Museum, Illinois Holocaust Museum, Thrive Chicago, some wonderful institutions here in the city. And Daniel Cervantes, who's Senior VP of Programs at Skills for Chicagoland's Future. Daniel was a scholar among the inaugural MBA cohort at Loyola University and is alum of University of Chicago's Civic Leadership Academy Fellowship, which we know just is a tremendous network that we're so delighted to have Daniel and David both with us here today to share some of their perspectives on the power of intergenerational relationships. As I've done with the other pairings, I'm wondering if you could just share very briefly, like 30 seconds beyond that high-level intro that I shared of who you are and what you're up to today, what you're excited about these days. Daniel, let me start with you.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for appreciate the opportunity to have both David and I on this particular program. Just kind of top level, since on top of everything you just mentioned, right now I've been very busy focusing on the moment that we're in and how do we actually assist many of the employers that we're working with to actually bring jobs directly into the neighborhoods and specifically the communities which historically have been underinvested. And I think the second piece I'd add is that right now we're actually looking to scale the model beyond the 2 markets, Chicago and Rhode Island, that we're in. So I've been, now that we're flying back, been out and touring other cities and locations where we're expecting to bring our model there.
Tremendous, tremendous. And David, what might people be interested in knowing about what you're up to today?
Well, Mary, I'm in the process of inventing my next chapter. So having the opportunity to work with Daniel and all of the people at the Village and Chicago Innovation, it's perfect for me because their essence and mission is about transitions. And you mentioned my role at McCormick. So it just, as it turned out at the very beginning of the pandemic, I completed an 11-year term at McCormick. So I am now with Daniel and others' help figuring out what comes next.
There we go. An exciting phase, an exciting phase. That's tremendous. And you certainly are tapped into the right networks for that. So as I have with the other 3, let me ask each of you to use 3 words to describe your fellow mentor. David, how would you describe Daniel?
So the 3 I had were listener. He's a terrific listener. Second, quite related, empathetic, great feel and understanding of people. And the third thing, which maybe counts in my book as much or more than anything else, is a positive. That attitude is key to so many things in life. And Daniel's blessed with a real positive outlook.
Oh, terrific, terrific. Daniel, how about 3 words for David?
Yeah, I mean, there's many words to describe the very accomplished David Hiller, but I think 3 succinctly, I'd say authentic, respected, and then my favorite, youthful.
Okay. Okay. Pick one of those and tell us why.
Well, I can go either route, but I'll say the youthful piece, just to elaborate on that, is, I was a big fan of just sort of the overall concept. I had never heard of an generational mentorship program. And once I met David and the level of excitement, the fact that he's talking about, the next chapter and what he wants to do, I mean, he is trying to really give back all the lived experience and personal, into the community in which he grew up in, and just the level of energy. I was just amazed at, really at heart, you're like in your 30s or 40s, David, I'm telling you.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Age is just a number. So I'd be curious to hear a specific, particularly because of the perspectives each of you bring, what drew you to the program, Ageless Innovators?
Well, I could start. I mentioned one key thing was the fact that I was making my own transition. And I thought, why not be able to benefit from the direct insights and help of Daniel as my friend and co-mentor, but all the folks at the Village and at Chicago Innovation whose stock in trade are being smart about doing this kind of thing.
Terrific. What drew you to it, Daniel?
Yeah, I think for me, Mary, for me, it was lived experience, right? And what I mean by that is you can go, depending on where you're at in your career and life, there's a lot of challenges that I think as a country, as a nation, as a world, we're confronted with. And what I was particularly intrigued is that, especially when I got connected to David, is that David has, been through things, right? And he's been able to see turbulent times, whether you want to call it the dot-com bust, the Great Recession. I mean, these are things that I myself also went through and navigated, but the decision-making that comes out of that and how you navigate the complexity, lived experience. I mean, there's nothing to substitute that. You can't, you can study it in a book, but to actually be able to talk to somebody, take how they navigated those and put it in perspective to the current situation. I mean, we got many, many challenges in front of us. And I think for me, that was the most intriguing aspect of the program.
Yeah. And then I'm going to stick with you for a minute, Daniel. Tell us, that's kind of what was intriguing. How did it go once you were involved? And I guess now looking back, how do you value mentoring, or what impact, I suppose, has this relationship had and this program had on your life?
Yeah, I think for me, the timing of this program was spot on, right? Not only thinking about sort of how the position that I hold within the organization, the completion of a graduate degree, so for me, number one, it was self-reflection, right? And the mentoring allowed me to, at a moment where I was trying to self-reflect on not only what I want to do professionally, but also, being Mexican-American, again, the pandemic, the heightened awareness around racial equity, all these very big topics were a moment of plenty of self-reflection, and to be able to talk to David and to get perspective about when he was leading, right? And when he was in positions where he was not only leading, but in some cases leading beyond authority, right? Where maybe it wasn't his final call. And so all of that was helpful for me. I think the other thing is, perception, right? I can look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, where are the areas that I need to concentrate and focus on and grow? But I think no matter where you are in your career, I think it's always important to have someone who's open and willing to be honest with you in a mentorship capacity. And I think David, that was huge, because there's things that he pointed out to me that perhaps were in front of me, but I wasn't seeing them. And I think that ability to have somebody that can look at you and also offer perspective on perception is absolutely important.
That's really powerful. And
sorry, I went a little deep there.
No. I mean, I think that's the era that we're in. This is, and you've called out what we're going through as a country and individuals. So thank you. Thank you.
Mary, if I may, I have to jump in and tell you one further intergenerational aspect of this. When Daniel and I were first getting to know each other, and he was telling me about his family. It turns out that his son just fairly recently entered the Franklin Elementary School that I graduated from like 60 years ago, or however many years ago that was.
Yeah.
And so we're building this into a third generational element. In fact, we're planning to get together in the next week or so, and I'll be able to meet the young man and the rest of the family and fill out our multi-generational mentorship.
Oh, how tremendous. How tremendous is that? I love it. I love it. And that brings me to my next question, actually, because we really have, in many regards, moved to more of an age segregated kind of society where people of different ages are living in their own silos, working in their own silos and whatnot. Why? Well, I guess, is that a problem? I'm going to assume yes, because we're all here today, but why is that a problem? And how does it stifle innovation and growth? That's this age segregation that we are wanting to confront. Either of you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. One is, again, from my perspective of recently transitioning from the McCormick Foundation, I could see immediately how, when you're, I'm not calling it, Darcy won't let me call it retired. It's not, it's discovering the next chapter. But when I was at McCormick, you know, I was entirely surrounded by 20 something, 30 something, 40 something, and so on. And we were very fortunate to have a very diverse, age-wise and otherwise, a team. And moving into my new setting, I can see how easy it is to be cut off from other generations in just in your day-to-day life as well as professionally. And so it's been a good reminder for me of the importance of being intentional about both in your own life, who you include, and being multi-generational, as well as in career and so forth, because it's such the threat of such a loss of insight and observation and fun and energy. And it's been a reminder for me that at different stages, you do need to be more purposeful about making sure that you maintain those connections.
Yeah, I love that you use the word intentional and purposeful, because that is often what it comes down to. Any observations from you, Daniel, on this age segregated society we've found ourselves in and what we might be losing?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, right off the bat is, you know, diversity. Oftentimes when we think of diversity, right, the first notion that comes to mind is sort of race and sexual orientation. But I think we don't often talk about the age, right? The generational diversity pieces. And, you know, for me, I've always felt, and just the way I essentially was raised, was that you have to be able to assess history in the past if you want to move forward, right, in the direction. And I think having sort of different generations come together and you feed off of that information is absolutely critical. I think we had a real life situation at work where, you know, somebody wanted to resolve something just through a text. And I'm like, no, like these are situations where you have to see this person face to face now that we're in the situation that we can. And there is so much that we found out by having that face-to-face meeting. There was some underlying things that person was going through. And so, I mean, these are the things that, again, we appreciate the speed at which texting and whatnot allows us to do and conduct business. But you have to appreciate kind of the past and the history and all that to be able to move forward.
Yeah, yeah. So terrifically said. So terrifically said. So I do want to move us along because I want to bring everybody else back so that we can have an opportunity to sort of at least have a few moments with the full diversity and robust energy of the group here. While we are bringing our speakers back, I wonder if we could do just one final poll, and that is a little more specific to some of these things that Daniel and David were leading us into. And that's whether your company has any programs, initiatives, or activities designed to make cross-generational connections among employees. So if you could take a moment, folks in the audience here, and click either yes, no, or I'm not sure, we can get a sense of how some of these themes are playing out in various companies. In answer to this, it looks like we do have some folks who are saying about a third of the audience saying, yes, indeed, our company does have some programs or initiatives or activities designed to make cross-generational connections, but the majority still don't. So I think that that points to a real opportunity to, especially for this innovative audience and community that is coming together through Chicago Innovation and the Village Chicago, to begin to spark more. So is what we're going to do, I wonder if those of you who answered yes, if you would be willing to just in the chat real briefly note if your company or organization is doing anything that this community would be interested in knowing. We'll be able to keep the chat and might allow us to do some follow-up afterwards, because we don't want to lose sight of those. And so now that we have this wonderful group back, I am going to have us do a quick couple questions from the audience. And Paul, I think you were going to help me with that. Paul, do you have any questions from the audience that we could share with the panelists?
Yes, thanks, Mary. We got a few here. I'll start with one from Jasmine Franklin, and she wants to know, what are ways you see companies bridging this generational gap to enable free flow of information?
Ooh, fabulous. Kelly, I'm going to put you on the spot. Seems like you might have a thought on that.
Yeah. So free flow of information, intergenerational teams. So I'm going to pick up on what Daniel said earlier about when we often think about diversity, we have certain frame in mind when we think about diverse teams, when in fact intergenerational teams are also critically important to bring people into the space so that they can communicate effectively in those ways. So that's one thing. And that's what we do very much, obviously, at our school. But I would definitely recommend organizations to really look at how they're ensuring that there is cross-generational representation on teams, in committees, in planning groups, and so forth.
Yep. And it kind of comes back to what David was saying too about being intentional. And it sounds like, you have to sort of purposefully decide, yes, we want to be one of our values, just as so many of us are doing with other efforts around addressing racial inequities, really being intentional in including age as one of the aspects of diversity that you're wanting to bring in is so important for many of these efforts. Anybody else have a quick response to that question that was posed?
I think it does get back to the question of being very intentional.
Yeah.
I think I shared with some of us in a pre-meeting on one of the nonprofits that I'm involved in that has a very active diversity, equity, and inclusion effort, but it had never apparently occurred to anybody that we needed to be specifically mindful about age, and so now that is becoming part of the explicit mission of the entity, and for obviously for good reason. So but it does need to be lifted up specifically.
Yep. Terrific. Paul, do we have one other quick one, or should I just? Yes. I do want to leave time for closing remarks.
Yeah, we'll have time for one more from the audience. This one is from Sharon Riley, and she is asking, do you find that certain communities or demographics are more intergenerationally minded? And how do you engage a more diverse group of participants?
In this theme of diversity. Anyone have a thought on that? Daniel, you talked a little bit about kind of some cultural constructs. I wonder if you could weigh in on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as I was hearing that question. I'll sort of flip it a little bit because we were answering the questions, something like that around when the height of COVID was taking place, and specifically just to address it, is that there are certain cultures, and I'll call myself out, right, within the Latino American community, where it is common for within a single family to have multi-generational, right, individuals within your household, whether it's not only your parents but your parents' parents, right? It definitely is very common to see that all within the same household. And so I would say that for us, when we were sort of thinking about how the impact of COVID was much more aggressive in certain communities, we actually were dissecting it from a cultural perspective of, where is it much more common versus in other cultures where perhaps that's not the norm, right? Maybe at 18, they already got your suitcase packed and ready to send you off. But yeah, I would say that definitely that's an angle that we've looked at it.
Yeah, that multi-generational. And so I'm going to focus us back on that. Just as you said, multi-generational households. We all know that we have multi-generational workforces now, certainly with sometimes up to 5 generations in the workforce. Mm-hmm. So as this is going to be my rapid fire closeout for all of you, if you could share just only one, I'm going to limit you to one practice that you feel could be used to increase the intergenerational knowledge sharing in workplaces, what would that be to develop an environment where multi-generational teams can really collaborate and thrive together? What would be one practice? And I'm going to go in the order of my screen. So Ashley, what would be one that you would promote?
I would encourage everybody to educate their managers on the business case of why it's important to have inclusive teams, not just the C-suite or the HR team.
Love it. Tonise.
Well, I'm going to repeat what David and Daniel and Kelly and you said, Mary, because I think it's so fundamental, which is we have to include age in the DE&I definitions, because that will lead to programs that focus on this and make it a positive, not a negative. But right now, age is left out.
Yep. Kelly.
So in schools, we often talk about flipping the classroom. I think we need to flip the workplace. And it's not just people who have certain more experience or older or what have you who are making the decisions on these teams, that the younger people have leadership designate where they can actually design the teams and start to have a little bit more of space for their input and so forth to bring teams together, to make them truly intergenerational.
Love it. David, one practice.
Interns.
Love it. And I would think you would probably think either any age for an intern. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Daniel?
Oh my God, great minds think alike. I literally was going to say intern because I had just rewatched the Robert De Niro movie where he interns. And so I was like, interns would be great.
All right. And David, how about you?
I would say practice, finding ways to bring people together. We mentioned organizing teams that way. One I would say, which is also a kind of fun thing that a number of us on this call have actually participated in, which is the improv workshop that the Village has sponsored. And there's so many ways to bring people together and try to build spontaneity and fun and humor, and it crosses generations. So I'd say finding activities like that bring people together in not a purely work setting.
I love it. Thank you. Well, that's going to close us out for today. Luke, I wonder if you have any other remarks or that you want folks to know about as we all go forth and continue to knowledge share, to build wonderful, dynamic, age-integrated workplaces.
Yes, well, thank you. First and foremost, thank you, Mary, for doing a terrific job leading today's session. And to Tonise, Ashley, Kelly, Daniel, and our pair of very wise Davids. You are an outstanding group of speakers today. And yes, Mary, I thought there were so many great things that each of you said about the value of intergenerational relationship building, the notion of shedding our own and others' constraints based on stereotypes, seeing how we're all quite similar to each other versus different in terms of how we communicate, what we care about, but yet also acknowledging it's our differences that make us more innovative when we bring those differences together. And even, how we think about our own lived experiences, the lived experiences of others, and how we leverage each of those when we're writing our own next chapters. So yes, tons of great conversation for our audience. And speaking of our audience, I want to thank all of you for tuning in and being a part of Chicago Innovation's 20th anniversary year. And we have more events and programming planned this year than ever before. And the next event is on July 13th. It's called Invent and Reinvent Yourself. It'll explore how people and companies have adapted and changed during COVID, and as a result, are reemerging better than before. And in the meantime, you can also self-nominate your organization for the 20th Annual Chicago Innovation Awards. The deadline is July 30th. You can buy tickets and get involved in our in-gala. It's on August 5th. And then just want to give one last thank you to Kathy and Darcy at the Village Chicago and all of our other sponsors. To everyone else, stay well, enjoy the Chicago summer. It is beautiful outside these days, and we hope to see you all again real soon.